Hello again and welcome to another video from Angie B Arts and Crafts. Today I'm going to have a look at using a gel press. This has been requested by one of the YouTube subscribers that I have, so I thought I'd do this as my next video. Now I currently have just the one larger press and some of the smaller ones. I'm just going to focus on the larger press, which is A5, 5x7 inches. This was the first gel press I ever got and I really like it. It's one of those things that once you start doing, you can get totally engrossed in. It becomes almost a mindful activity for me, and I just end up with pages and pages and pages of different backgrounds. Now the other thing that you need is a medium to put onto the plate. Let's start with the gel plate itself though. So this is mine. I've kept the plastic packaging, which for me is a miracle because I never keep packaging off anything, but for this I do. But please don't judge me when you see the state of my gel press. It's not quite as clean as one would expect. Having said that, that's because I don't clean it. Some of this is actually on the cover. When you get your gel press, just move these paints over. When you get your gel press, it comes between two sheets of acetate. Now, some people choose to stick it onto an acrylic block to give you more opportunity to control where you're putting it and make it easier to move. Personally, I haven't actually gotten round to that, but it is an option if you want to. If you don't want to, if you're choosing to use it by picking it up, it may be a little bit easier to have it onto a large stamping block or something. I tend not to have it on a block. Well, I don't have it on a block. I just keep it as it is. So the first thing that you need to do is just take off one of the sheets of acetate. As you can see, I've got lots and lots of colour and print on this, and that's because I don't clean my plate, so when I stick the acetate on, it picks up what's left. The reason that I don't clean my plate is number one, can't be bothered. Number two is the fact that I personally really like the effect that you get when these bits that you can see mix with the other colours that you put on. You never know what you're going to get. And one of the things I love about using the gel plate is that it is never the same thing twice. And it just makes it a bit more interesting. So you don't need to keep both covers on, you remove one, but for now I'll just put that back on and then talk about what we can use on it. So here I have a range of different paints that I have in my stash. They tend to be acrylic paints, although there are some water-based. This one's water-based and this one's water-based. And I don't have any fear of mixing the different types of paints. On my gel plate, it's a case of put on what I can reach and see what happens. So ones that are easier to put on from the point of view of getting enough or not enough paint on are things like the Dylusions paints. Now these have actually been altered slightly and they now come within a squirty bottle similar, I suppose similar to this. I've not got any of the new ones, but I have seen them because I'm still using up my tubs. These were the original, and the thing I like about this is quite simply you have a great big tub that you can stick in your finger, your palette knife, your brush, whatever it is you want to use to apply the paint. Chalk paint I quite like because of the finish it gives you. It's a very matte finish. I have quite a wide range of the Cosmic Shimmer chalk paints, and I just find them a really nice paint to work with. On occasion with these I have been known to end up with mud because I've mixed the colours wrongly, but it doesn't matter because you've got two options. You can either bin it, because all it is a piece of card or a piece of paper, or you can put a different print over the top of it, even if it's just white gesso print, and then start again. So it doesn't matter. There's no such thing as mistakes. This is one of a set of Vicki Boutin paints that I have, and I really like the bottles on these because they're soft, so they're a lot easier to get the paint out with. Again, just pick off these. It's quite nice to have the little nozzle with paints. What I tend to do is try and fold the lid back so it doesn't scratch onto the mat. This is a very cheap acrylic paint that I got as part of a set from, oh, I can't remember the name of the shop. It's a cheap bookshop that's on a lot of high streets and the name of it escapes me. But anyway, it was a really cheap set that came with, I think, 18 different colours or something. Not difficulty, but the thing that makes this a little bit more complex is the fact you have to unscrew it, and also you've got a much bigger hole there for the liquid paint to come out of. So it's not always as easy to judge the amount that you're putting on. But don't let that deter you, because you'll just get used to it. Again, this is from Reeves. I really like the size of this bottle, and I like the fact it's similar in feel to this, maybe a little bit softer, but it has, again, got the squirty top. So it's a lot easier to control what's coming out. And the final type, these were quite a new find. I've only had these a couple of months. And the Sennelier, I think. I don't know. Don't really speak French. I'm assuming that's French. They're a fantastic paint, and I really like the control that you have. You wouldn't think with a bag of paint that you'd have that much control. Just let me find my raggy to open this. It's being a bit stubborn. Oh, that one doesn't want to open for me. There we go. We'll open this one instead. So with this one, your control comes again from the squeeziness. So if I squeeze this, you can see it starts to come up. These are thicker paints, which again makes them an interesting option to use. I think one of the reasons that that other one won't open, and I'm going to have to do something about it, is because I over squeeze them and quite often get excess paint around them. So that's some of the different paints that I use on it. So what do you use to apply the paints? Well, the thing I prefer to use is a brayer. And you may have come across different ones of these. They come in different sizes. These are generally the two most common sizes. The different styles here, both of them can still be taken off and cleaned if you want to. I tend to clean them as I go. So once I've finished using them, I'll squirt them while they're on my raggy with some water and roll them and give them a rub, and it comes up clean, as you can see here. This one kind of didn't bother. Again, it doesn't matter. You can see there's various lumps and bumps on this, but when you're using a gel plate, that all adds texture, so I quite like it. This one does get cleaned occasionally, but just not quite as often. Now, if you do want to clean them, or if you need to change the head, all brayers have heads that can come out. On this one, which is a Ranger one, it just comes out like that. What you need to make sure is that these two metal bars here don't cross over. If they cross over, you're going to struggle to get the right movement. The other thing that you may find with these that sometimes happens is one of the ends unplugs, and sometimes if you're a bit too vicious in your rolling, it can unplug and start to come out, and that can stop the movement because it starts to push against the metal frame. So just do a quick check before you start and make sure these plastic plugs, are in properly at the end. Okay. These two little plastic pimples are very simply for if you're brayering and you're rolling onto something, and then you want to put your brayer down and you put it like that on your mat, you're actually going to be putting paint or whatever product medium you're using onto your mat. If you do this, it just means there's a gap underneath, so you're not putting any paint, ink, whatever it is you're using onto the mat underneath. This one, I can't remember the make of it, but this one slots out like that and slots back in the same way. This one I find squeaks a lot, but that's fine. It doesn't stop it rolling. Again, there's lumps and chunks that have come out of this one, but it doesn't worry me in the slightest. It just adds a little bit of texture. So once you've put down your first layer of medium, you then want something to actually put some designs into it. So I've got with me a selection of things to use. The first thing I've got is bubble wrap. Now, I automatically start popping bubble wrap, but since I've had a gel plate, I've stopped popping it because the little bubbles and the bigger bubbles make amazing texture. One of the things that's nice is the bubbles aren't completely full, so you get lots of little wrinkles and each one's a bit different. So that's one way of getting texture. Another way is to use stencils. Now these can be background stencils, such as this one, or this one, which you tend to use more in the background. Now all these stencils I've picked out are from All and Create, but there's obviously millions of stencils out there. These ones, again, you can use them as background stencils, or you can start to introduce them as your focal point. Then you have things like this, which you can have as a focal point. It's got the point in the middle where you can start adding extras. You have beautiful stencils like this that you can use, and again start to add in certain areas of it in certain colours. You can just get it as a background, you can have it as a focal point, it's up to you. And just another couple that I picked out. I don't know which ones I'm going to use today, but I just thought I'd get a selection of them out. Another thing that I've done is just pull out a few stamps. Again, I've just gone from my All and Create collection and pulled out some little background stamps. So these are A7 background stamps, and some line stamps. So they tend to be used for things like creating a frame around something, but when you're using them with a gel press, you're just using them to create texture in your layers. So the next thing that we need to think about is what are we going to actually put the ink onto. So I have got pieces of white card. So this is just a large piece of card that I've cut down into a range of different sizes. Rather than sticking at always having certain sizes, I just see what comes out when I decide to run the cutter over the card. So you can see there's a range of different widths. And the reason I do that is it gives the cards more interest. It's not always 6.5 by 4.5 on a 7 by 5 card. It just means that you're having to then think about your background behind the piece of card that you've decorated. The other thing that I've brought over with me is a black art journal and a white art journal and another white art journal. Obviously different sizes. This one is an 8x8, this one is your A5, and this one's your A5. The reason I brought the black in was to let you see the difference on white versus black, because quite often what we forget is that we can actually use black card to do things. So this is just to let you see the difference. One thing that you will probably hear if you look at other videos is always have something to clean your brayer off with, so a piece of card at the side of you. So I do have some other pieces of card at the side for cleaning off my brayer. The reason I have a selection of things that I'm going to put the paint onto, put the prints onto, is because then I can keep going. If you just have one thing, you then have to stop and think of the next one. So to let me keep going, I've brought a selection with me. And what I tend to find is that by the end of this, my desk, my floor, every surface in my craft room is covered in pieces of card. So we'll see what happens today. So what I'm going to do is just get on with putting some, excuse me, putting some paint onto the gel press. I'll start off just by doing a plain print and then start introducing some texture. So as I say, you just take the cover off. When yours comes, it will be immaculate when you order one of your very own, and it's up to you. You can clean these off really easily. You can clean them off just by spraying them with water and giving them a wipe with a lint-free cloth, or even just using a baby wipe, and it comes off quite easily. As I say, I don't tend to bother. I quite like the way it looks. So I've got my brayers, and I'm going to stick to a palette of similar colours. I'll bring in the dark purple, the lilac and the turquoise. Okay, so I'm going to start by putting on some lilac. Now you don't need a lot of paint, But don't panic if you put paint on and go, oh my word, that's just way too much. And you just put it where you want it. So if you wanted to make some form of a scene, say fields and woods and the sky, then you'd be thinking about where you were actually laying down your colour. If you're just making a background for no specific intent, you don't need to worry about that. So I'm just going to start with those two, and then my larger brayer. And what you do, can you see there, it's sticking. So what you don't want to do, in order to stop it sticking, you need the paint that's going to go between the brayer and the plate. So once that paint's there, it doesn't stick anymore. So your paint is actually acting as a kind of lubricant on your gel plate, between your gel plate and your card, your brayer, sorry. So that's just a really simple background. And then I've got a piece of card here, which is going to be my runoff card. And all I'm going to do is just brayer off. This is just to clean your brayer in between each thing. It doesn't come up perfectly, it doesn't matter. So all I'm going to do is pick up a piece of card and put it down on top of the gel plate. Now you have a couple of options. If you don't want to, I'm already getting mucky, but if you don't want to get mucky, you can put an A4 sheet of just copier paper over the top. Some people just print onto copier paper. It's entirely up to you. Personally, I'm not really one to stay clean. Apologies for the fingernails. I've been using alcohol inks this morning and they got a little bit messy. So you need to press it down. You want to feel the gel plate underneath and make sure that your card is in contact with it. And then you just hook underneath and hold the base and pull it off. So you can see there, I've picked up some of that colour that was still lying on my card. I've got texture from where the brayer put various lines on, and where the paint has dried more in some areas, I've got some white areas because it's not picked up the paint, it's left it. There's one background. So we can make that slightly different by adding different things to it now. So I'm going to add a little bit more lilac. Yep. Let's just brayer that in. Now I'm not just rolling backwards and forwards and using a lot of pressure. It's quite a light pressure, and you kind of lift up as you come back. There's not very much paint on there, so I'm going to put a little bit more on, and you'll get used to how much you need. It takes a little bit of practice to just try how much paint you need for the method that you're doing and for a background or a finish that you actually like. Okay, so there we have just some lilac on top. I'm just going to clean off my brayer again. Now I'm going to pick up my bubble wrap. Everyone's getting bubble wrap at the minute. With lockdown, lots of people are ordering more, so we're all getting lots and lots of bubble wrap. So you can see here all the bubbles. I'll see if I can lift that up for you to see a bit more clearly. All the different bubbles are giving different textured blobs on your paint. So you can put that wherever you want it to be. I'll put a little bit more there, and that's it for the bubble wrap. So now what you can do is take one of your stencils and you can just press it on. Now when you press it on, you can press it on and just press around on the white bits, or you can brayer over it, and what that does is the brayer starts to pick off the paint that's in there. So you can see you're starting to get various lines. You can put patterns over patterns. There's absolutely no rules on what you can and can't do with this. And don't panic if it doesn't look like anything as you're doing it. Just give it a go. Get used to practicing, playing, doing a little bit here and there. So I'm going to get lots of dots, one of my favourite stencils from All and Create. And I'm just going to brayer a little bit of that there. And I'll brayer a little bit here. And you can see you're getting different textures depending where it's picking up. So there's quite a lot here of blank space. There's quite a lot where there doesn't appear to be any ink at all, so there's not going to be anything to pick up. So that's when you start then looking at your other colours. So I'm going to go back in with my darker colour. Let's just see if we can get that a little bit drier, because we don't want to then brayer off all the pattern. But we can add in our darker colour. Oh, that's a bit much. We'll just stick with that and spread it across. So you will see some mixing of the colour, and that's absolutely fine. You don't even have to cover it all. You can just cover bits of it. So you can still see underneath there's a slight image of what's going on in the background. Now what I'm going to do is add in some of the turquoise. Now I only want a little bit of the turquoise. So just a couple of little dots here and there. Okay. And then just start mixing that in as well. And all I'm doing is adding a little bit more colour and a little bit. And the more you brayer it, the more mixed the colours are. If you just do it a couple of times, all you're doing is the brayer picks up the paint, rolls around and plants it down in the next bit. So you have to move around in order to mix the paints together. So what I'm going to do now is take the card that I've already done. Doesn't matter if it's in the same plane, that's the way it was before. So I'm intentionally going to turn it and pop it back down. And don't worry about these edges, because these edges are the best bits as far as I'm concerned. Today I'm purely focusing on using inks, paints, sorry, not inks. You can use inks with this, but I didn't want to complicate things by trying to show you all the different things you can do in one fell swoop. So all I've done today is look at paints. So you can see here that you've picked up the bubble wrap, the stencil, the other stencil, the bubble wrap. So you're getting lots and lots of different colour. Now, if you want to, you can go in and get little bits from around the edges. So to pick it up, you choose where you want it to go. So I want to put a little bit along this edge. So I'm going to literally just plonk it on the edge and press it down. Don't worry about the back of your card. As I say, if you're using this on something where the back has to stay clean, just pop a piece of copy paper over the top before you do the rubbing. So you can see that's gone. That's picked it up and it's now on here. So we've got this additional colour, an additional layer of paint that wasn't there. So we can do the same on the other side. And it's kind of making a frame around it. And it picks up what it picks up, because it does dry quickly. So don't panic about it and think, oh, it needs to pick up a certain amount. It's left quite a bit there. That doesn't matter. It's picked up quite a lot as well. It's quite nice. It's picked up little bits of white that I didn't even know were there. So there you go. We'll do the bottom. Again, it's picked up a little bit. And we'll do this. So each time we're doing it, it's going to be a little bit drier. So the chances are it's going to pick up less. So there we go. We've now got a frame around a background, and we can use that. We can put a focal image on there, we can stamp on it, we can stick other bits onto it. It's entirely up to you what you do with it. So that's piece number one. So I'm not going to clean. As I say, I don't do that. But I am going to put down a colour as the main that's different. So I'm going to go back in with the turquoise. I'm also going to add in some of the white. Now I do have a huge tub of gesso which I sometimes use, but for some reason my desk is getting fuller by the day, and whilst I'm videoing it's very difficult to have the big tub there. So until I actually clear my desk off, that's not going to work. So for this, so you can see it's starting to mix, and it's mixing in with the purple that's already on there. And I'm not being precious about where I do it. It's up to you if you want to do specific colours in specific ways. It just means you don't mix it as much. The more you mix it, the less control you have of where it is. So if you do want specific colours, then just don't mix it as much. What I'm going to do this time is use my Pink Pig. I get confused between Pink Pig and Pink Frog. My Pink Pig art journal, which I love because it's got the little pigs in it. Anyway, I'm going to use that, but I'm going to do it in a slightly different way, in that I'm going to transfer the image onto the page rather than put the page on top. But before I do that, I'm going to put in a nice little centerpiece. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to take a piece of card and I'm going to remove some of that paint from over the centerpiece. So again, as I say, I've just got a range of different sizes of card. And when you're doing this, you're wanting to try and get the ink to come through the stencil and print onto the card. So you really have to give it some welly. You can even go in, I'll use my clean brayer for this, I'll be good, and brayer it, but brayer it with a lot of pressure. Okay. Right, let's see what happened with that one. I think the thing I like about this is you don't know what you're going to get. Oh, I like that. I like that because it's got the edges as well. So I think that's rather pretty. So again, that can be used. You can cut it out. You can cut it in half and just use half of it on a card. It's entirely up to you what you do with them. But that's an image that I quite like. So I'm now going to take this off and you'll see the image left behind. But you also have this. So instead of wasting this, because it doesn't matter if the ink on my gel plate dries, I am going to print this onto this art journal. So all I'm going to do, just a couple of squirts of water out of my distress water bottle, sorry. Pop this on, get my raggy, which I've put somewhere for safekeeping. I'll have to use this one, I can't find the one I've been using. And all this is for is to absorb any ink that comes out from underneath. Now there's no guarantee there's going to be any print at all from this because the acrylic ink does dry quickly, but it's worth having a go. The other thing to think about is how to clean your stencils after use. Oh, that's quite nice actually. That's come out quite well. I mustn't have sprayed as much water because you can see that's still quite dry. But that's still a nice background in an art journal, so I'm perfectly happy with that. Pop that to one side. Cleaning these off, you've got a couple of options. One is to make sure that you've always got a bowl of water at the side of you and to make sure that you dunk it straight into the bowl of water. Another is to let it dry and give it a scrub at the sink. Another is what I'm doing here, which is literally spray it with water and give it a rub. It's not going to come up perfectly clean first time. As with the gel press, I'm not that bothered. I tend to clean one side, wipe it, and then just wipe off the other side where any ink has gone through. Okay, so that's it. It's relatively clean. It's usable again. I'm perfectly happy with that. So we'll pop that to one side. Then we will bring this back in. So because this is now dried, I can put something else on top of it. To transfer that image onto a piece of card or paper or into a journal, you need another paint to lift it. It kind of acts like the background and pulls it off. So you tend to want to go for either a contrasting colour or a much paler colour. So I'm just going to put some white on and just show you how this works. Now it will, because I've got some blues and purples on my brayer, it will come up as a pale. In fact, I'll get a clean brayer. Let's do it with a clean one, Angela. This is another brayer that I've got to hand. So I'll just give that, because it's a clean brayer, it's sticky again. You need to get the paint on it. And then, I'm not a fan of these ones. I haven't quite sussed them. Oh, it's not rolling. Right. We'll ignore that one. We'll just go in with this one that we know rolls well, and I'll add a bit more white paint because a lot of it's come off on that other brayer. There we go. That's better. Apologies for the squeaking. I think there's a pet mouse inside of it. Right. So with this one, what I am going to do is actually pick up the gel press. And this is where having the mat attached to it would be easier because it gives you more control. But I'm just going to put that down. I'm going to put it to one side, I think, and then work along the side of it when I finish that page off. So you can see the pattern that you're going to get. Again, it depends how many layers you've got on as to what you can see. But then it's just about giving it a really good press, pressing all over with it. This is effectively stamping with a gel plate, the same way as you would with a stamp, particularly if you had it on a stamping block. I did get one stamping block, but it was too small to do what I needed to do, and the only other big stamping block I've got is my A4 one. Oop. Get a good grip, pull it off. Oh, I quite like that as well. So again, you're getting this bittiness around the edge, which I like, that grungy look. It's a style that I go for, but you're getting this beautiful clear print, which is the stencil. So it's actually a print of the stencil as opposed to a print through the stencil, which is what this one is. So you get off one layer of paint, I have now got a print through the stencil, a print off the stencil, and a clean up print. And that's from one application. So it's starting to show what you can do when using a gel press, and this is where I start running out of space. So next thing I'm going to do, I think I'm going to get some other colours out. So I think we'll go with some pink and some orange, and let's see if I can get this yellow up. Yes. So again, get the yellow. I like bright, but it still has to be messy. So again, I'm going to go, I'll give that a bit of a clean. It has got some blue on it. I'm not overly worried. But I've also got a background here that I can use. I'm going to pop that out of the way, and I'm going to use a clean piece of card as my mop-up card. Now, if you do want to have distinctive colours, I mean, this is getting some green in it because of the blue that's already on the press and on the roller. It's absolutely fine to choose to have a much cleaner print than I do. This is just the style that I prefer, and the fact that I'm really rubbish at cleaning things up. But if you want a clean one, you've got the option of having several gel presses. You've got the option of actually cleaning your gel presses in between each print or each set of prints. You've also got the option of having several brayers and swapping between them. Okay, and then we'll add one more colour. We'll add a little bit of pink. I'm going to put the pink down at the other end and then move it up. There we go. You can tell I like the pink. It's going down the fastest out of this set. Now, I didn't clean off my brayer in between on that one because it's the same set of colours. So you can see what's happening here is the base layer there was a bit dry and the brayer was a little bit dry as well. So when I've gone in with the pink, it's actually added its own texture, which I quite like. And don't panic about these backgrounds because you can do all sorts, even if they look like a pile of mud. And I've had a few that do look like a pile of mud. Once I've dealt with them, they're fine. They're perfectly usable. So on this one, what I'm going to do is use some texture stamps. So I've got this one, which is kind of like broken china or broken glass. So I'm going to go in and just put a few little bits of it here and there. and it's up to you what you do with these. Now what I would say is with stamps, because acrylic is a plastic, your best bet is to at the very least wet your stamp. So all I'm doing at the minute, move this out of the way so I don't squirt it, is literally just squirting water onto my stamp, and then I'm going to give it a rub on here. And the only reason I'm doing this is because if the acrylic paint, the plastic paint sticks, it will ruin the outline of your stamp and it will be a pain to try and get clean. So with stamps, I do actually clean them off, but that's the only thing I clean off. But I value my stamps. You can see this is a well-loved stamp. It has got some acrylic in it, but it's also got lots of different inks on it as well. So I don't clean the inks off at all. So it's just about seeing where you want that texture. And I've not got a plan. I'm not aiming to achieve a particular look. I'm just seeing what I end up with and hoping that I like it. And as I said at the beginning, if I don't, it isn't the end of the world, because I can just print a gesso print over the top of it, print another colour over the top of it, or just paint gesso over it and start again. It's not the end of the world at all. So that one's cleaned off, and then we'll go with one more, fill in some of the gaps. Now I'm not taking these off the back sheets because there's no need to. I tend to just keep them. You can still move them on the back sheets, and I don't put them onto a block. The block that I tend to use for these stamps and for most of my stamping these days is my All and Create smaller block. This is the border block. It's a really useful one if I've got a slightly wider image that I'm wanting to stamp and I want the whole thing. I tend to use the Dylusions. Turn it the right way around. There we go. The Dylusions stamping block. The thing that I like about this is it is a little bit wider, but you've also got an edge here that you can draw along or cut along to give you a nice wavy edge to your cards or whatever, and you can draw through these and do doodling on the holes and on the slits. So this is the stamping block that I bought for this to go on, but it's too close to the same size, so I really need a bigger one. So that just sits there, not used. I do sometimes use it for stamping, but if I'm honest, not as often as I should. Okay, right, so we've got a few different stamps there. So I don't use any of the stamping blocks because I don't want a really clear, perfect image. I want it to look like a background just with little bits on it. So pop the stamps out of the way. So what I want to do now, if I flip this over, you'll be able to see that's kind of what you're going to be printing. But because a lot of this is dried, you're not going to be able to print it. If I was to try and pull a print off this now, it would be bitty because some areas have dried more than others. So what you need to do is give that layer in between so that you can lift the print. So I'm going to again go in with my white paint and just pop a little bit on to it, and then do a little bit of greying. Oops, getting messy, surprise, surprise. So my craft room is very much like my crafting, messy. I tend to know where most things are, and if you ask my family they will tell you that the only things that I never know where they are the glasses that I need. So if I'm in my readers, I'm looking for my distance glasses, never have a clue, and vice versa. And also my phone, it's the one thing that I lose most consistently is my phone. I've got my son at home at the minute and I'm regularly saying to him, have you seen my phone? And he just searches around the house until he finds it. He's home from uni because of coronavirus. It's very helpful to have, actually. Saves me having to look. Right, I'm going to go back to smaller pieces, and I'm actually going to do 2 pieces on this, so we get 2 different images. So I'm going to pull this one from here, and I'm going to pull this one. I'm going to overlap slightly and overhang slightly so we get a bit of an edge to this one. And the other thing to do with this is, one thing that I've done quite a lot, is just get a piece of A4 and just keep printing around the one piece of card. And you get overlaps and you get some absolutely amazing images because of the overlaps. because again, you don't know what you're going to get with each one, but then if you add other overlaps to it, you get something completely different. So that's come out much darker and duller than I was expecting. But then again, if you look at the page that I've done here, that's got the colours on that I was using, you'll see it's similar in colour. I quite like that though. Let's see how this one is. So again, you see lots, it's brighter in the middle. I don't think I'd put as much ink down or as heavy a layer down on there. And you can see this green, even though I haven't actually put green on, is coming through because of the mix of all the colours that I have put on. So you're going to get some really interesting prints. All right. Next thing I'm going to do is put on just one simple colour. I'm going to go for, I'll go for the green actually. We'll use the Dylusions. Where did I put it? Here we have it. So my palette knife, these Dylusions paint are so thick, they're wonderful. They're really nice paints. But the problem that I've had with them, that from what I can gather quite a few people have had, is that they, in the pots, have been drying out. So what I tend to do is when I've opened them, just before I close them, is just give a squirt of water to try and keep a little bit of moisture in there and stop it from drying out. So again, I'm going in with the same brayer, so I'm not going to get a true green colour, but it's going to be mainly green. If you want to get that proper colour, feel free to have a selection of brayers or actually clean them. I just like getting on with the printing. So I'm going to go back to similarly to what I did on the first print, which was just a block colour. And I'll do this onto the black actually. So I'm going to lift it up to do it because oops, I've managed to smudge that a bit. So there we go. Move my brayer. I do, as I've just done, sometimes forget to clean off the brayer, but strangely enough it doesn't worry me. I'm going to pop this down. So this is just a way of getting paint on, but it's a bit different. If you want to, you can just brayer straight onto your page, but I think this just gives you a little bit of variety in what you end up with, and it gives you those extra colours and lines that you wouldn't get if you were just doing a basic brayer. So I'm going to continue working on this page, but you can see having the black behind, you get a very different colour coming through because of the darkness of that. So I'm now going to add in some more green when I see it. There it is. So we'll add a little bit more of this in. I think that's enough actually. Now you can see, again, my palette knife has got some pinks and reds on it from working with it yesterday, which I hadn't cleaned off properly, and that's coming through a little bit on here as well. I'm not worried about it. It all adds to it. So on this, I'm not aiming for full coverage. I just want it a bit more like that. Remember to clean off my brayer. I'm doing well. Oops, water bottle's going again. So for this one, I'm going to get, this is one of my favourites. I think this is a beautiful, beautiful stencil. Okay, so I'm going to put that on, and I'm just going to brayer over it as it is. I'm not going to pick up the ink with another piece of paper, so I'm not lifting as much off it, but I am making sure that the edges, so where the brayer and the gel press come together because of the pressure, the edges of the stencil are going to be getting more paint on them, so you get more of an edge around your image from the stencil. Hopefully you'll be able to see what I mean when I lift this off. Okay, clean that off, lift up my stencil so you can see there's almost like a little lip around some of the little pieces of stencil. So again, if I wasn't making a video, I'd spray that and put it onto another piece. In fact, I will, because I know you won't mind just hanging fire for a moment. We'll pop that there, put a piece of card here, give this a squirt, make sure I've got it all this time. Yes, I think I have, or most of it. I'm just going to pop it down onto that piece of card and then get my raggy. So there's still going to be ink on the back of it because that's where I brayed it, and the brayer still had ink on because it hadn't been cleaned off thoroughly, but that's fine. This isn't about getting perfect prints. This isn't about getting a perfect image. It's about giving you backgrounds and pieces of card and pieces of paper and pages in your art journal to start building on or to add to. Love it. Absolutely love it. I do love these things that you get, and you can see more the pink coming through with the green there from what was on the palette knife. Right, where am I going to put that now? I shall pop that there for now, and I'll pop this out of the way somewhere safe. Oh. Okay, so we're going to come back to this. Now that's had a bit of time to dry, and I'm just wafting it a little bit. Not that that's going to make a huge difference because it's not overly warm in the house at the minute. So what I'm going to do now is add some different colours into this. So instead of it just being straight onto the green, I'm going to be adding a couple of little areas of colour. So to do that, she says searching nicely. Oh, there it is. I couldn't find my other brayer. I'm going to use my little brayer because this will reduce the size of the area I'm working in. Okay, and I'm going to use a little bit of yellow. Oh, wrong. Yeah, no. Brain isn't working now. I nearly put it onto there. So that's actually a bit too much, so I'm going to get my palette knife and remove some of that. Okay, and I'm going to swap it down to here. Okay, so we'll start with the yellow, and we're just putting it in that corner. I'll do the same in this corner. So I'm just really gently doing this. You can almost do it, I'm hardly touching it at all, and it is just to add a little bit of colour when we lift that paint up. So again, pop this on here, and then I'm going to pop the orange. In fact, I'm going to do this, put it onto my mat just so as I don't get too much, and then apply it with a craft knife, not craft knife, a palette knife, sorry. Give my palette knife a bit of a wipe, and then pop this on just a little bit in each corner. And then I'm going to use the brayer to spread it onto the image. Okay, there we go. So you can see my sheet's getting some very interesting colours on it, and that's one of the other things, is you don't know what you're going to end up with on your sheets. Now I actually want this to dry. Now the one thing you never ever do with your gel plate is use a heat gun on it. So I'm actually going to pop that to one side, and I'm going to do a quick clean up of paint that I've made a mess with using Raggy. And I'm going to do a very quick talk through. She says with optimism, but she can't find what she's looking for. Oh, here. Is it? Yes. So I said before that you could get different shapes of gel plates. So this is a small stamping block or gel plate holder. It's up to you what you use it as, and it's from Clarity, and it's the same brand as this larger one that I've got. I just bought the wrong size for that one. That was my own silliness. So this set I have got let me find a piece of coloured card, there we go. So I've got an oval, a hexagon and a rectangle. So again, these are Gelli Arts again. I do really like the Gelli Art products. I have tried a couple of other gel plates and I found them to be very thin. And because they were so thin, it was actually very difficult to get the pressure that you needed to get a really good print. So I wasn't a fan of them. So what I'll do very quickly now is a couple of prints using one of these while we wait for that big one to dry. Now what I like about this, particularly this hexagon, I do rather like working with hexagons. So you can line it up on your plate, get it pretty central. And then you can actually start working if you've got a bigger sheet. So say you were working on a 12 by 12 or an 8 by 8 page, you can start building up patchworks on it because of the way it is. So you can make different images but link them all together. So it's quite a nice way of getting a bigger background. I do really like using the hexagon for that. It's almost like quilting with paper. So we'll stick on a little bit of pink and spread it out a little bit. And then I'm just going to use one of the, I do love that pink. These are really cheap inks, but they work, paint sorry, but they work really well. This is another All and Create, but again, I really like it because of the different kind of shapes you get on it. So I'm just going to do, now for some reason that hasn't taken very well, but what I'm going to do is print it anyway and see what we get. Where's the ham? Because as I've said before, even if you don't like what you get, you can cover it up easily. Oh, I quite like that. Now for some reason there's a lot of cells on that and I don't know the reason for it. I haven't had these for a very long time. These are my second set. And I haven't had them that long, so it could be that there's still some form of a film on them, which is like an oil film from the process of making the gel plates. So that could be, or it could just be that I didn't put enough paint on. That's what I was saying about it. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference if it comes out unexpected to what you were, sorry, differently to what you're expecting. Okay, so we'll get these again. We'll try this one, and we'll try this one, and we'll just do another print at the side. And you can see what I mean by beginning a patchwork. Okay, so then I'm going to put a little bit of the yellow on. And then I'm going to show you something that I did the other day that just made me smile because I thought it was very clever. I felt very proud of myself. So I've talked about using different kinds of things like the bubble wrap to give you texture. But then I looked at the lid of this and you can see it's covered in paint because of it. But I actually used the lid of this. I liked the grooves in it. So then I started printing along like this. And you can put whatever pattern you want on. You can use a whole range of things. If you look on Amazon or any other crafty kind of place, because there are lots available, you'll see that you can get a range of different tools that you can use to actually add texture to your plate. But you can also just look around your home and see what you've got and use that. So this is one thing that I discovered the other day and I thought, was quite nice. And I'm just going to put, because that's gone quite dry now, I'm going to stick a little bit of white on, just to give us a way of lifting that image off onto the card. I need another piece of card. I got sidetracked from what I was planning on doing. I was actually planning on putting just a little piece in to fill in the gaps. Then I got sidetracked with the lid of my paint. So apologies for that. It happens easily. So you can see, I was saying about this brayer, that end has popped out. So suddenly my brayer's not turning. All you need to do is pop it back in. There we go. And as soon as that pops back in, my brayer's turning again, absolutely fine. Okie doke. Right, so I'm going to put this one in the middle. So as I say, in this video, all I'm looking at is how you can use paint with a brayer, and this is really just an introduction, not with a brayer, with a gel press, sorry. There's so much you can do. You can see you've got that texture coming through. If I'd have had thicker paint on, it would have been a thicker texture. So it's about playing, and that's the one thing that I would say to anyone who's got a gel plate and hasn't done anything with it. Please play with it. It's the best way to find out what you can and can't do with it. I forgot that was on the block. Pop that side on there and put the backing on, and then I'm going to pull the big plate back in. Okay, so the big plate now is looking, it still looks a little bit damp, but we'll give it a go. What's the worst that could happen? So I'm going to pop some white on. Now we're using this again as our lift. And I'm going to use the big brayer because I want to cover the whole of the image. Now I'm not worried that it's picking it up because it's just going to give us a different look, and it's still going to be there. Even if it's a ghostly image, it will still be there. Okay, so clean off my brayer. I'm getting good at remembering this actually, I'm quite impressed. And I'm really liking the way that this side piece is turning out. So I'm going to pop that out of the way and bring in my black art journal again. I don't know if everyone else is like this, but as I craft, my space shrinks. So I have less and less space. I'm going to purposely turn it sideways on so I've got a chance of aligning it better, she says. Fingers crossed. So I'm just aligning it roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect, but with the layer that I've already put on. So I'm not printing this time onto black, I'm printing onto the greeny orangey layer that I'd already put on. You can see when you look here, there's an area that looks a bit empty, and that's where the brayer picked up the central image because I hadn't let it dry enough. And that's all that's happened. If you'd left it longer and it had been totally dry, it would have then picked up with the white paint much easier. Okay, so on here you can make out that we've got a little bit of that image that we put down, but we've got different colours in the corners. We've got the yellow, we've got the orange. So again, it's a background that you can use. But what I can do is take this, and you can go one of two ways. I'm going to go the way of just putting another card on top and see what comes off. If I don't like it, it doesn't matter. And one thing that's really nice is even if you only like a part of what you print, you can trim it down and use it on a card or on another page. You don't have to use the whole image as one. Oh, I quite like the way that's come out. I think that's come out better. So you can see the image really clearly. This is the bit where the brayer had picked up some of the ink, but you can see the yellow here, you can see the orange, but you can also see that there was still some of the purple on, which has now gone a bit bluer. So I think that's quite nice if you have that either way around, trim it down, and you could actually do another print of stamp on top of that for something. I'm going to pick up this last little bit, and then I think I will stop waffling because I'm sure you've had enough of me. If you have any questions about using the gel press, please drop me a line either on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, or Facebook is Angie B Cards and Crafts. Instagram is just Angie B. So I've not got much off that one, but what I can do is keep that, and when I do another print, add to it. Alternatively, let's see what happens. I'll stick a little bit of white on. Brayer over the top. Again, the other thing that I haven't mentioned is you don't have to use the whole of your mat every single time. You can use different parts of it. So I'm just going to roughly align that and see if I can pull any sort of print off it. You can just do a little piece, you can just do a central piece, you can actually mask off areas of your mat, of your gel plate, once you've laid the paint down, so you get a very specific area with an image. The other things that you can use that I'll be doing videos on over the next couple of weeks are things like using distress inks. Well, that's looking a bit more interesting as a background. I quite like that. I wonder if we can pick that up a little bit more. I'm going to be doing some with distress inks and distress oxides to see what they look like and how they differ. I quite like that as a background now because it's got the distress. I'm a sucker for the distressed look, but I quite like it's also got some texture coming through from the little crispy bits around the edges. So I'm not going to bin that, I will definitely use that. What I will do on the back of today's video is put together some cards and pages and show you what I've actually done with the backgrounds that I've made. But if you have any questions about using the gel plate, or if you have anything that you've experienced that you think might be useful, or if you can come up with any other ideas for household products that you can use to add that texture, please get in touch. It'd be great to hear from you, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.